Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here at midday on Thursday, September the 7th. We will focus in on Hurricane Lee. It has been upgraded now to a Category 2 hurricane with maximum sustained winds at 105 miles per hour. The midday observation has it continuing on a west-northwest track about 15 miles per hour. I do expect that to slow down over the upcoming weekend. That'll be interesting to watch. I do believe as it moves underneath an upper level ridge, it will tend to slow down over the upcoming weekend. And by the way, the movement under that upper level ridge is one of the reasons why intensification will continue. It should reach major hurricane status as early as later today. That's a Category 3 classification. And then with a continuation of the relaxation of the wind shear and the movement over abnormally warm waters of the tropical Atlantic, it very well could attain Category 4, even Category 5 status over the upcoming weekend or during the early part of next week. And one of the interesting things we'll talk about here is down the road, later next week, it looks like it'll travel over a cold wake, a colder than normal sea surface temperature area as it gets up to the higher latitudes of the Atlantic Ocean later next week. That was created by upwelling from the passage of Hurricane Franklin last week, and we'll talk about that over the next couple of minutes. Here's the latest satellite imagery loop of Lee. Again, it has now reached Category 2 status here at the midday observation on Thursday. Very impressive symmetrical appearance to the overall cloud pattern here. By the way, on its heels is another system here that will very likely reach tropical storm and even hurricane status. It would be named Margot. Meanwhile, Lee continues on a west-northwest track. It will take it to the north of the northern Leeward Islands here. It'll completely bypass the Caribbean Sea and continue on this west-northwest track for the next few days. Now, later this weekend into the early part of next week, it will likely make an all-important turn from a west-northwest track to a northerly track, and that will be something closely monitored because it has big-time implications on, let's say, the northeast U.S. coastline. If, in fact, that dramatic turn to the north does not take place, or not as dramatically or as quick, it could have some serious implications downstream. But for now, most of the computer forecast models maintain a turn from a west-northwest path to a northerly path that would most likely bring it to the east of the U.S. coastline, east coast. But here is the latest. Again, a very impressive look to it, very likely to become a major hurricane, Category 3, later today. Now we'll kind of focus in on the European ensemble runs. Again, as we did yesterday's video, these are 0Z ensemble runs of the Euro. And this is the various storm tracks by different members, different models here. And again, a continuation of a west-northwest track for the next few days, right into, well into the upcoming weekend. And then as it becomes increasingly influenced by what should be a developing trough over the Ohio Valley, over the eastern U.S. later next week, it will make a turn from a west-northwest path to more of a northerly direction. Again, that is the critical time period here, late in the weekend, early part of next week. This turning point right in this area right here will be closely monitored, because if it happens a little bit later on or not quite as strong of a turn here, that could have some serious implications, especially for folks along the, let's say, the mid-Atlantic and northeast U.S. coastline. As it stands right now, Maine, Nova Scotia, all those Canadian maritime provinces absolutely have to keep a close eye on Hurricane Lee. Now, again, west-northwest over the next few days, and then a turn is expected to more of a northerly direction. Right now it's under the influence of an upper-level ridge over the central Atlantic. That is helping to steer to the west-northwest, but as that potential trough develops over the continental U.S., the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes, later next week, it should cause a turn from west-northwest to north in Hurricane Lee. Well, I mentioned the sea surface temperature anomalies with respect to a cold wake left behind by the passage of Hurricane Franklin last week. This is a map from Tropical Tidbits that shows the current sea surface temperature anomalies with Lee right in this area right here. It looks like it'll continue on a west-northwest track over some very warm waters. We're pushing nearly 30 degrees Celsius over the next few days. That combined with the relaxation of the wind shear will allow it to intensify not only over the next 24 hours, but really right into the upcoming weekend. Again, likely to reach Category 3 status, major hurricane status later today or tonight, and then has a chance to go all the way up to Category 4, maybe even Category 5 over the upcoming weekend or during the early part of next week. Now, eventually, this turn to the north will bring it over these colder than normal waters here left behind by Hurricane Franklin. When a hurricane travels over oceans, it can certainly result in upwelling. Upwelling brings colder water from underneath all the way up to the surface, and that is what happened here as Hurricane Franklin passed over this area up into the North Atlantic, and it has left this cold wake behind. So chances are that will cause a weakening of the system as it moves over higher and higher latitudes in the western part of the Atlantic Ocean. So again, very interesting. Some abnormally warm waters right now and for the next few days will aid in intensification. Ultimately, later next week, the opposite could happen. We could have a weakening of Lee as it moves over some colder than normal waters, again left behind by Hurricane Franklin, which passed through that area last week. Well, let's take a look here at the 0Z ensemble run of the European model. Kind of have a general focus here on the European model. I think it has a pretty good handle on the overall situation, but we're many, many days away yet from a potential impact on the northeast U.S. We're talking about later next week, even possibly as long as later next weekend. So nothing is set in stone at this point in time. I just want to point out some of the major players involved, what we'll be monitoring over the next several days. We're looking at the 500 millibar height anomaly forecast map, again using the ensemble run of the European from last night. First of all, starting off the day here, actually midday here on Thursday, a trough starting to form over the Ohio Valley. The return of the scattered showers and thunderstorms for the mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S. after many, many dry days. And this unsettled weather pattern that begins later today and tonight in the mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S. looks like it'll continue right through the upcoming weekend, maybe even right through the early part of next week. Any shower or thunderstorm that forms in this unsettled weather pattern in this part of the nation can produce some heavy rainfall. Storms can reach strong to severe levels as well. So quite a change from the dry weather pattern, the rain-free weather pattern of the past several days. Looks like unsettled weather returns to the mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. for the next few days. Now, let's move forward here, and we'll kind of focus in on what could impact the ultimate movement of Hurricane Lee. Now, here we are all the way to Sunday morning. This is the reflection at 500 millibars of Hurricane Lee, and it can become all the way up to a Category 5 storm late in the weekend, early part of next week. These are the Lesser Antilles, and it'll go well north of the Caribbean Sea, which is down here, and stay over those very warm waters of the southwestern part of the tropical Atlantic. Meanwhile, there's a little trough here continuing to exist over the Tennessee Valley early next week, and some high-level, high-pressure ridging in the upper levels of the atmosphere early next week. Now we're all the way up to next Monday, and let's move forward here in time. And one feature that certainly continues to be a highlight is this troughiness that currently exists over the Tennessee Valley, Ohio Valley, kind of reinvigorates, rejuvenates later next week. This is now the middle of next week, and this trough will be a key player. And also, all this upper level ridging here, as indicated on these particular maps by the orange shading here over eastern Canada. That'll be a big player as well with the ultimate storm track of Lee. Now let's go a little bit farther in time, and here we go all the way a week from right now, the middle of the day, next Thursday, September 14th. We have this upper level ridging right here over southeastern Canada and a trough over the eastern states, the Ohio Valley. This is a week away. These systems are really over the Pacific Ocean right now, so nothing is set in stone at this particular time. The how this ends up will dictate the ultimate movement of Hurricane Lee. For example, if this trough comes in a little bit stronger, a little bit quicker, that'll help to steer Lee away. This is a more desirable solution, by the way. If in fact this comes in a little bit stronger, a little bit quicker, it'll help to push Lee away from the U.S. East Coast, never allowing it to reach the East Coast. On the other hand, if the upper level ridge over southeastern Canada becomes the dominant system and the trough weakens or slows down in its movement, then that could allow a little bit farther to the west movement of Lee. In any case, right now, certainly all residents along the Middle Atlantic coastline, Northeast coastline, certainly Canadian maritime provinces, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland should keep a close eye on Lee over the next several days. Now let's continue to move forward. What the Ensemble Run tends to do here, we'll back up a little bit, is sometimes upper level troughs tend to pull in or capture a tropical system, and this is on the table here from this particular run of the European Ensemble last night's 0Z run here. Notice the reflection of 500 millibars right here next Friday. It's many days away, and then it kind of gets absorbed or captured in, pulls it back towards the northeast U.S. coastline at the end of next week. And again, we're talking way out here. We're a week and a half away next Saturday. That's why we have many, many days to go on this particular system. And notice how strong that upper level ridge ends up becoming over the Canadian maritime provinces by the end of next week, even the beginning part of the weekend in the middle of September. Again, the final interaction between this ridge, this trough, and Lee will play a large role in determining exactly where Hurricane Lee ends up. Well, now let's take a look at the surface forecast maps from the operational version of the European model. This is from 0Z last night, not the Ensemble, but the conventional, the operational version of the European model. Here we are midday on Thursday, and right there is the reflection at the surface of Hurricane Lee. Let's keep moving forward here with time. By the way, keep an eye on the millibars here. Now we're down to 963 in the 962, and it continues to intensify over the next several days. We're now into the middle of the day on Saturday. A 958 hurricane continues to intensify. Again, Category 3 status likely to be reached later today, maybe if not later today, tonight. Category 4, Category 5 even on the table over the upcoming weekend into the early part of next week. By the way, very unsettled weather pattern, again, from tonight through Sunday, maybe even through Monday and Tuesday of next week for the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast U.S. After several dry days, looks like several days with scattered showers and thunderstorms, some of which can be heavy at times. Let's keep moving forward here. And here we go with the European model slowly moving. Again, I agree with this slowing down of this system. And by the way, that is kind of always a concern whenever a hurricane slows down, because the last thing you want is to see landfall with a slowing down type of hurricane. But we're many days away here, but it continues to intensify into the early part of next week. Look at that. 918 millibar low. That is a very powerful hurricane by the early part of next week. It is still over those very warm waters, and it gets all the way down to as low as 911 millibars on this particular run of the European model. Not all models have this kind of magnitude by any means, but it just certainly is a red flag. And then it starts to weaken as potentially as a result of moving over those colder waters of the Atlantic Ocean, that cold wake here. Now we're all the way out to next Friday. It's weakens from a 911 millibar low, not to diminish the potential impact here, but goes from a 911 to a 958, and part of that is the result of moving over those colder than normal waters left behind by Hurricane Franklin. Now, it is at this point in time, at the end of next week, that upper level trough over the Ohio Valley, the eastern U.S., can act to perhaps absorb this system and kind of pull it towards Maine, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland. It's still many, many days away. This is all the way out to September 16th, next Saturday, a week from this Saturday. So we have many, many days to go. And for that reason alone, nothing is set in stone. And all residents along the U.S. East Coast, especially from the Carolinas up to New England, have to closely monitor Hurricane Lee. Again, has now climbed to Category 2 status, likely Category 3 major hurricane status later today or tonight, perhaps as high as a 4 or Category 5 over the upcoming weekend or into the early part of next week. And we'll really focus in on that turning point late this week and early next week from a west-northwest track to a northerly track. That is the next thing to really closely monitor. Any kind of deviation in the turning point could have serious implications downstream later on next week into the following weekend. So that's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.